The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the David Pakman Show. I'm Farron Cousins from Ring of Fire, sitting in for David Pakman today. David is at a media and cryptocurrency event in South Florida. He will be back on Thursday. Let's jump right in. Obviously, last few days, there's been some pretty massive news happening in the United States. First and foremost, with these indictments that were handed down this past Friday by the Special Prosecutor's Office against 13 individuals, 3 organizations, all tied to Russian campaign interference and the spreading of propaganda via social media and other news outlets here. So just to kind of get to the heart of it real quick, we have 13 individuals, 3 organizations that were indicted by Robert Mueller's office. All of these indictments pertain to the election interference, specifically spreading of propaganda through the United States via Twitter, Facebook. They had memes, entire little organizations set up that were running these propaganda schemes. And according to the indictment, all of these were, or I shouldn't say all, because it makes sure to not say all, almost all of these things were to bash Hillary Clinton and promote Donald Trump. The remainder that were not promoting Trump or bashing Hillary were all pretty much bashing people like Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio. The goal was very clear. They wanted Donald Trump to be the Republican nominee, and then once he secured that, they wanted him to be president. The thing that's missing from the equation right now is why? Why did they want Donald Trump? That's the big piece of all of this that we still don't really have an answer to. Did they interfere in the election by spreading propaganda? 100% absolutely. Did they hack into voting systems in the United States? According to the U.S. government, yes, they did. We do not know if vote totals were changed, but we do know that they successfully penetrated voting systems in the United States. That information was revealed a few weeks ago. So again, the question still remains, why? Why did they want Donald Trump? Did they see him as somebody they could control? Or was the overall goal of this to embarrass the United States on the global stage? If it's the latter, then it's worked. We know that the rest of the world, their opinion of the United States because of Donald Trump has plummeted. Tourism from outside the United States into this country has plummeted under Donald Trump. 40,000 tourism jobs in the last year have been lost because we just don't have people coming over here because of Donald Trump. So if the goal was embarrassment, not anything related to policy, then they've already succeeded in that because the United States is pretty embarrassed of Donald Trump and the rest of the world is looking down on us. If it's because they want something out of him, though, that's something that still remains to be determined. And what exactly they could want is another thing. Could it be that they don't want sanctions against Russia from the United States? Certainly a plausible idea. Donald Trump has failed so far to implement the sanctions that were passed with only 5 nay votes recently between the House and the Senate. And Donald Trump says, no, we're good. We don't need those sanctions against Russia. Why would we need them? And then a couple weeks after that, we get these indictments handed down. Now, what's really interesting here is that we know it happened. We know Obama and Biden knew about it. They had meetings talking about what to do. And yet Mitch McConnell, as we found out recently, was the one who decided to not sign on to a bipartisan, basically public announcement saying that, be careful, we believe the Russians are attempting to interfere with the 2016 presidential election. Mitch McConnell refused to do that, and Obama didn't want to do it without the support of the Republicans, because then it would seem like he was trying to promote Hillary, bash Trump, And so he decided to not say anything about it, although we do have intelligence organizations that were working on it at the time. And because of that, because Obama did not speak out about it, whether you agree with it or you disagree with it, he didn't do it. So now Republicans are using these indictments as a way to attack Obama. So the fact that the Russians interfered with the election is now, according to Republicans, according to Fox News, that's an Obama failure. Donald Trump this past weekend, Saturday morning, absolutely went off his rocker on Twitter, trying to blame this entire mess on Obama. And not just that Obama was president at the time, but showing yet again how he failed in every regard regarding Russia. He didn't do enough. He didn't do this. He didn't do that. And again, what's ironic is that Donald Trump himself won't sign the sanctions, didn't want to sign them, that a bipartisan majority of the House and Senate sent to him several weeks ago. Only 5 nay votes out of the House and Senate on that sanction bill. I mean, we rarely see bipartisanship like this in the United States, and finally we get it, and Trump says no thanks. So instead of accepting the blame, instead of admitting that he's not going to do anything about this problem, he's once again doing what he does best, and that's deflecting it back onto Obama. And Fox News is more than happy to play along with that. They're going along and saying, look, Obama knew about this. He didn't do anything about it. What a failure. Well, no. Obama expelled 35 diplomats. Obama implemented sanctions. The failure on this issue lies with both Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell. The facts back that up. You can't spin your way out of this. Unfortunately, though, the hardcore Make America Great Again crowd, the hardcore Fox News viewers, they believe this is an Obama failure. They've been fed that line too many times from conservative media, from conservative politicians. And so once again, this is just another Obama screwed up. Donald Trump is great. He's going to protect us from Russia. Another interesting thing that happened this weekend as a result of Donald Trump's little Twitter tirade is that we had national intelligence officials who were meeting overseas to discuss the Russian interference, who had to tell them, hey, please disregard what the president is tweeting. We're going to take this issue seriously. We're going to do something about it. Because based on what Donald Trump was sending out Saturday morning, everybody pretty much got the impression that he doesn't care. All he wants to do is shift blame. He wants to say, this was Obama. This guy did this, the guy before me. So now he's gone. So now we have nothing to worry about. Well, no. The intelligence community has been warning us for quite some time now that Russians could try to interfere in the 2018 midterm elections. One of the main reasons we kind of wanted those sanctions in place, just to let them know that they're not going to get away with it. Trump's not doing anything about it. Doesn't seem to care. Doesn't really mind that Russians might interfere again. Why? Because it's going to be to the benefit of Republicans. I mean, I think it's hilarious that he's out there trying to say that Obama was covering it up or that they interfered on behalf of Hillary Clinton. Because according to Trump and some of the hardcore MAGA crowd, the Russians wanted Hillary Clinton to win. It just didn't go their way. So even with the Russian interference, she still managed to lose the election as one of the talking points they've got going around right now. But look, all of this underscores the biggest problem there is. The Russians interfered. Maybe it was sanctioned by the Russian government. Jury's still out on that. But regardless, something has to happen. And one of the biggest things that has to happen is on us. It's on Americans. We have to learn how to differentiate between fake news propaganda and real honest reporting. Because they can throw all the propaganda that they want at us. And if we're dumb enough to believe it, then they succeed. You know, recently there was this organization that had come up essentially with a standardized test of sorts. And they were going around to countries and they said, you know, this will help teach high school students how to differentiate between fake news and honest reporting. Countries like Great Britain decided to implement this so they could start teaching young high school students how to differentiate between the two. Other countries also have adopted this. The United States declined. They didn't want to be a part of this, testing or curriculum to teach our children how to tell the difference between journalism and fake news propaganda. And why could that be? Well, because an uninformed electorate, people who cannot tell the difference between fiction and reality, benefits the Republicans. We have already seen in the last few weeks, study after study come out saying that Donald Trump supporters were far more likely to share these fake news stories, to share these propaganda memes on social media than Democrats or progressives. It works. The fake news being pushed out there, the hashtags, all of the propaganda worked on this particular group of people. And our government doesn't want to teach them the difference because they're the ones who benefited from it. So that's where we are right now with the Mueller investigation. We have a lot of question marks. We're getting a lot more answers. And according to James Clapper, former director of national intelligence for the United States, the big shoe is probably still yet to drop. Recently in an interview, James Clapper said that he believes that Robert Mueller is most likely going after Donald Trump's personal and professional finances. And when he finds whatever it is he's looking for, that is going to be the next big shoe to drop in this investigation. Now, Clapper admitted he's not a part of the investigation, and that proclamation, I guess, was pure speculation. He doesn't know for sure what they're going after, but he does know that Robert Mueller knows more about this investigation than anyone else. He does know that European banks have been subpoenaed for records regarding Donald Trump's personal finances and professional finances. So it does seem likely, based on the available evidence, that Clapper could be 100% correct. The next big shoe after this indictment Friday we just had could be the finances of Donald Trump himself and his businesses. Because as we know, and we'll talk about this more after the break, Jared Kushner's finances right now are suddenly in the spotlight, and that's not going to end well for anybody. I'm Farron Cousins, sitting in for David Pakman. You can follow me on Twitter at Farron Balanced. Also visit our website at trofire.com. We'll be right back.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome back to the David Pakman Show. I'm Farron Cousins in for David Pakman today and tomorrow. And David's down in South Florida. He's got a media and cryptocurrency event that he's attending. So I will be taking care of all of your political and news needs for the next day or two. So before the break, we were talking about the fact that Donald Trump's finances could be what Mueller is going after next in this investigation following the indictments of the 13 Russians and the 3 Russian agencies spreading propaganda during the 2016 election. While we don't know for sure if it is Trump himself and his finances that's going to be the next big shoe to drop in this investigation, what we do know, what broke the day after all of these indictments came down, was that Robert Mueller is 100% looking into the finances of Jared Kushner, his family, and their businesses. Specifically, Robert Mueller wants to find out a little bit more about the financing, the lending and the loans and all of that of certain properties held by Kushner and his family's accounts. Specifically, some of the deals that seemed to take place during the transition and since Jared Kushner became an official with the Donald Trump White House. Here it is. They have been asking a lot of questions of Kushner's business associates. And one of the things they're trying to figure out is what happened with the financing for 666 Fifth Avenue. That's one of the big questions. The timing of this particular deal that they had is very questionable according to the investigators. They want to know if Kushner's potential connections to the incoming Trump administration, being his son-in-law, if that played any role in helping to secure any of the financing. And furthermore, even without potential quid pro quo there, was this financing on the level? And one of the reasons that they want to know the answers to these questions is because completely separate from the Mueller investigation is the fact that the IRS has also opened up an investigation into Jared Kushner and his family and their finances and their business dealings. So Jared Kushner right now finds himself smack in the middle of two separate investigations about potentially shady business deals that he and his family have been making. Again, this IRS investigation that was first announced, I believe, late last week, has nothing to do with what's going on with the Mueller investigation. This is a separate government organization, the IRS, looking at his financials and his family's financials, and they're saying, you know what? Something doesn't quite smell right here. We need to get to the bottom of this. And meanwhile, Robert Mueller and his team, after going through all of the information that they've gone through tax returns, they've subpoenaed banks, and they decided, you know what? Something's not right here with the Kushner clan. Let's go ahead and start to focus more on that in this investigation. So if you remember, months ago when Donald Trump said, Robert Mueller better stay away from the finances. Don't go looking over there. There's nothing in there for you to see, so don't open that door. And Robert Mueller basically said, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and open that door then. This is what Trump didn't want people to see. Maybe it involves Trump himself. But right now, we know that there was enough evidence from two separate organizations, the Special Prosecutor's Office and the IRS, to kind of hone the focus of these onto Jared Kushner's business dealings. So they want to know where all the money's coming from. They want to know where he's spending it. And more importantly, they want to know, is he using his office within the White House to curry favor with foreign governments to make deals for new Trump properties or for new investments into properties in the United States? What is he doing? And I think that question, the what is he doing, is probably one of the best questions to ask of the Trump administration today. Why is Jared Kushner even there? What does he do? Why does he still have a security clearance even though he hasn't formally been cleared by the intelligence apparatus in the United States to have access to full classified data? This guy has had to amend his disclosure forms for his security clearance, I believe at least a dozen times, maybe even more than that. Sometimes one day right after another. And he still can't seem to get it right. He had to misidentify his classification on his absentee ballot from this past November. He couldn't fill out that form correctly. So given what we've seen from Jared Kushner and all of his, missteps with handling forms and filling out documents, I would bet that if there is anything to either of these investigations, whether it's the IRS or the Special Prosecutor's Office looking into him, I think for certain that they're going to find that Kushner himself was involved. And I mean no disrespect, but come on. This guy is certainly not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I mean, again, with all the times he's had to amend his disclosure forms because he can't seem to get it right. So I think if they're going to find anything on Trump, it's going to have to come through Kushner. He has screwed up so many times that there's got to be something in there that this guy has done wrong, or something he did that he thought he'd get away with, and now he can't because he's got all of these different investigations into him. And if they catch him on something, will he be the one to turn on Donald Trump? He certainly seems like it. I mean, he kind of seems like the stereotypical squealer that you see in movies. You know, the guy that gets caught and he's like, all right, I'll tell you everything. Just don't lock me away. I can't go to jail. That's Kushner, in my opinion. And so maybe that's why all of these investigations right now seem to be focusing on him, because they could be looking at him as the key to unlock whatever it is Donald Trump himself is hiding. Well, here's one thing that we know Donald Trump cannot hide any longer. The payment to Stormy Daniels, Stephanie Clifford, the adult film star actress, who Trump's lawyer last week came out and said, you know what, I made the $130,000 payment to Miss Clifford. That was me. It wasn't illegal. So let's all move on. Trump had nothing to do with this. Well, as it turns out, MSNBC legal analyst believes that this payment to Miss Clifford, Stormy Daniels, could actually now be investigated by Robert Mueller and the special prosecutor's office. Why? Because it is essentially an in-kind contribution to the Donald Trump campaign and therefore would violate the limits on what an individual is allowed to donate to a presidential campaign. Here's what they're saying right now. If this payment was made to Stephanie Clifford, Stormy Daniels, in an attempt to aid the Donald Trump campaign, then yes, 100% it is an in-kind contribution to the Trump campaign, was not disclosed, exceeded the limits on acceptable campaign donations, and therefore would be illegal, finding Mr. Cohen, Donald Trump's lawyer, who says he made the payment out of his own pocket. This guy's going to find himself in very unpleasant legal hot water at this point. So if Mueller is now looking into that payment, we have yet another branch added to this special prosecution tree, because this goes beyond any of the things we've already seen. It has nothing to do with the Kushner financials, has nothing to do with the Russian interference or the Russian collusion part of the investigation. No, this is now a whole other branch of the tree that has sprouted in the last few weeks, only to be made worse by Trump's lawyer himself by saying, yes, I made the payment. And here's the thing, you cannot expect that this guy made this payment by himself without the knowledge of anyone else. He set up an LLC in a different state, put the money into there, had that little corporation that he created write the check to Stormy Daniels' lawyer. No, nothing about that story makes sense. Nothing about it is plausible. There had to have been other human beings involved. And that is hopefully what Robert Mueller and his team are also looking at right now. And they've got a lot on their plate. I mean, good grief. At this point, it seems like every week or two, we're finding a new thread to follow. And this Stormy Daniels one is a story that obviously the Trump administration has been fairly mum about. They haven't said too much about it, but we do know that since the story broke, things have been a little iffy, I guess you'd say, between Melania and Donald himself. But there's something to this. This is more than just a Trump had an affair with an adult film star. That's secondary. You know, that's a personal issue. That's not even an impeachable offense by any stretch of the imagination. But this payment, this hush money that was paid to her, that's the story. And I think that's the main reason that the Trump administration is staying oddly silent about the story, because they understand that this one has real ramifications for them. They can't lie their way out of this. The lawyer already admitted to doing it. You know, the story from years ago has already been told. It happened. The payment happened. And last week, Ms. Clifford, said that, yes, she's going to tell her story now. At least her lawyer said she was. And hopefully the first person to hear that story about the payment and about everything that took place to keep her quiet, the first person to hear about that should be Robert Mueller. And then immediately after talking to her, he needs to pull in Cohen, Donald Trump's lawyer, and say, okay, you tell me what happened. And I'm going to see how that measures up to what Ms. Clifford just told me. I'm Farron Cousins, in for David Pakman. We got to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more of The David Pakman Show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Welcome back to the David Pakman Show. I'm Farron Cousins from Ring of Fire, sitting in for David Pakman today and tomorrow. Obviously, one of the biggest stories, even bigger than the indictments recently handed out by the Special Prosecutor's Office, is the tragedy that took place in Parkland, Florida, this past week. Donald Trump could not have botched the response to this massacre any worse than he actually did. Not only did the man go down there and give a speech where he didn't once mention the word gun, but he also posed for one of the most idiotic photo shoots I think I have ever seen any sitting president in my lifetime perform. Sitting there with first responders, thumbs up, big giant smile on his face like he just won a Medal of Honor. 17 people, most of them children, dead. And Donald Trump sat there smiling like an idiot, as if he had done anything to make it better, anything to help, or as if this was some kind of joyous occasion. And then, I wish that is as bad as his response got, but oh no, it got so much worse. He then goes on Twitter, decides to blame Obama for this. Democrats had the White House and full control of both the House and Senate for what, 2 years? And they didn't do anything about gun control. Now, I hate to admit it. I have to agree with him on that. That's correct. They did nothing about it. They should have, but they didn't. They did, during Obama's time in office, put in protections that made it a little bit more harder for mentally ill American citizens to buy weapons, to buy firearms, which Donald Trump repealed in his second month in office last year. But then, after trying to pin this as an Obama failure, Obama screwed up, Obama, everything bad that happens in the world, in the eyes of Donald Trump and the Republicans, it's always going to go back to Obama. So then after that, Donald Trump says, yeah, we got a mental health issue problem in this country and we got to fix it. That's the real issue. Okay, well, again, you literally made it worse and you're not taking any responsibility for that. You can whine and cry all day long that we have a mental health crisis. But at the end of the day, you're the one that repealed that rule. That wasn't Paul Ryan. That wasn't Mitch McConnell. That wasn't the Koch brothers. That was you. You signed your name on that, Donald. This massacre is 100% yours. You own it. You helped this happen. And when the next one happens, and it will, it could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be by the end of the week, but it'll happen again because they're not doing anything about it. Again, wish that was the end of it, but it's not. Donald Trump, after all of this, decides, as he usually does, he's going to go play golf. Donald Trump spent part of his time on Saturday morning golfing, while just a few miles away, family members and fellow students were lowering their friends, their children, their brothers, their sisters into the ground as a result of this massacre. And Donald Trump was out golfing. And then later that night, Donald Trump finally decides to talk to a few people about gun control. But it wasn't the victims' families. It wasn't their friends. It wasn't experts. It wasn't advocates. It was the wealthy members of Mar-a-Lago. According to stories, to reports, what's going on right now. Saturday evening, Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago in South Florida was asking his wealthy donors, wealthy buddies, the people who had to pay a $200,000 entry fee to get into Mar-a-Lago as members. He asked them what he should do about gun control in the United States. Should we do anything? How do we handle this? I don't know. I'm not qualified to hold this position as president of the United States. So why don't you tell me, Mr. Hedge Fund Manager, Mr. Real Estate Developer? I'm sure you know more about the issue than I do. And I'm honestly sure they probably do. I'm sure that pretty much anybody in this country knows more about any issue better than you, Mr. Trump. And yeah, people are angry. I'm angry. You know, a few weeks ago, it was a Thursday evening, 3 weeks ago, I believe. My wife, who is a teacher, special education teacher, mind you, got a call from her principal saying that a student has made a threat against the school that he was going to come in on Friday and shoot students and teachers. Anybody wearing blue that day was his specific target. They weren't closing the school. The threat had been made via Snapchat. Police were investigating. There will be an increased police presence at the school on Friday at every entrance, every exit, and patrolling the halls. I think they had about 8 or 9 different police vehicles parked outside all day long. And that's what she went to sleep to on that Thursday evening, knowing that she was going to work tomorrow and a student had threatened to come in and shoot everyone. So Friday morning, she gets up, terrified, kisses the kids goodbye a little bit longer than usual, gave them extra hug, not knowing if she was coming home that day. I didn't know if she'd come home that day. She did. No event took place. Before school began, they found the kid. He was arrested. Crisis averted. That's not what happened in Parkland. That's not what happened at too many of these schools or churches or nightclubs or malls. Kids went to school that day and didn't come home, ever. And Trump was golfing while their bodies were being put into the ground. But that's why what these students, these survivors, are doing this week, are doing now, have been doing since this tragedy. That's why what they're doing is so important. They're organizing. They're saying no more. I'm not going to bury any more of my classmates. Nobody in this country should have to bury any more of their classmates or their brothers and sisters. No more parents should have to bury their children because they were killed in school. And you can blame mental health. You can do what Fox News is doing and Republicans and saying it's the family dynamic. It's the video games. It's the movies. It's Hollywood. But at the end of the day, it's the guns. And I know they say guns don't kill people. People kill people. But you know what? People kill people with guns. With an AR-15 capable of firing 45 shots a minute. No civilian in the United States should have that weapon ever. There is no reason for it. There is no excuse for it. And if you try to rationalize that, then you're part of the problem. But these students, these survivors from this high school in Parkland, Florida, have organized. They've staged lie-ins at the White House, in front of the White House. They're on Twitter. They're fighting back. They're fighting against people like Tomi Lahren and the other idiots on Fox News who want to tell us that, no, this isn't a gun issue. You guys are just trying to take away our Second Amendment rights. You're politicizing this tragedy. Now's not the time to talk about it. No, this is the time to talk about it. While people are angry, while people do have the energy and the motivation to go out there and do something, that is the best time to do it. While this anger is still fresh, while the blood money that Republicans have received from the NRA is still dripping, while it's out there in the public, yeah, this is the time. And what these students are doing is 100% the right thing to do, and it is what is necessary to do. Hopefully something happens because of this. Because it's one thing to go out there and try to, argue against a parent, against an adult. But these are children whose friends are gone. And I know the parents also are out there fighting as well, but it's really hard for Fox News to fight back against children. But that hasn't stopped them. This morning, right-wing media outlets, all being retweeted and liked by Donald Trump Jr., mind you, have begun smearing one of the most vocal activists from Parkland, who's helping with the organization of these events to tell Congress to do something about gun violence and gun control. They're smearing him as the son of an FBI agent. And they're trying to say that he's trying to cover up for the fact that the FBI botched the response and the prevention of this tragedy. So Fox News, not Fox News, but conservative media and Fox News with it, they found a way to attack the children, to attack the friends and families of the victims. They've already found a way. I don't know that it's going to work this time. I think we've put too many children, too many family members in the ground for these attacks to take hold anymore. Did the FBI miss some warning signs? Yeah, they did. And that is unfortunate. But at the end of the day, if this kid didn't have his hands on an AR-15, this couldn't have happened. Or any other high-capacity rifle, since I know Republicans love to argue the terminology rather than focus on the issue. If this kid didn't have a weapon capable of firing dozens of rounds per minute to maximize killing, this wouldn't have happened. We've had an assault weapons ban in the United States before. It didn't solve all our problems, but they were nowhere near as bad as they are today. They were nowhere near as bad as they are since that ban expired in 2004 because Bush and his cronies didn't want to renew it. We were fine as a country when we had that ban in place. Nobody's Second Amendment rights were infringed. The only thing that was hurting were the profits of the gun manufacturers. But now their profits are soaring. You know who else's profits are soaring? The people who make small coffins. I'm Farron Cousins, in for David Pakman today. Got to take a quick break. You can follow me on Twitter at FarronBalanced. You can check me out online at trofire.com. We'll be right back.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome back to the David Pakman Show. I'm Farron Cousins from Ring of Fire, sitting in for David Pakman today, and I will also be with you tomorrow. You know, a lot has been said recently about guns in the United States, obviously for very good reasons. There's a huge movement. We've got to get some kind of gun control. But there's another issue related to that we absolutely also have to discuss. And it is the fact that right now, the United States Department of Defense, the United States military, is spending money at such an alarming rate that you have to wonder what is on the horizon. According to a recent report, Lockheed Martin in 2017 got $35.2 billion from the U.S. Defense Department. They accounted, that money to Lockheed Martin from the Defense Department accounted for 70% of the company's total sales in 2017. That $35 billion is more than the United States funded NASA with last year. It's the same as the GDP of Bolivia, according to reports. And that's how much we spent on just one defense contractor to buy their fighter jets. Boeing, not too far behind them, got $26.5 billion in 2016. And excuse me, the Lockheed Martin money was 2016, not 2017. But look, we are spending tens of billions of dollars per defense contractor right now. We just upped the military budget for this coming year. More billions upon billions upon billions to feed this disgusting war machine that we have built as a country. But this $35 billion to Lockheed Martin alone, not even including the $26 billion to Boeing, this is disgusting for the United States for many, many reasons. First and foremost, because we've been told a little too often in the last year that as a country, we simply can't afford something as monumental as universal health care. We can't afford debt-free college. We can't afford to forgive student loans anymore. Why? Well, for one, because we've got to get tax cuts to our wealthy donors. But two, because these poor defense contractors are just starving for our money. I mean, think about that. If we just took only the money that we gave to Lockheed and Boeing in a single year, which is more than $60 billion, because that 35.2 to Lockheed is actually a little bit lower than usual. Their average is about 38 billion a year. So anyway, just those two, Lockheed and Boeing, 60 billion a year. How many doctor's visits could that buy for American citizens? How many prescriptions could that fill? How many cancer screenings could that fund? How many students could we send to college? How many school lunches could we buy for starving American children? How many homes could we build for the homeless? I mean, the possibilities of what we could do with this money are endless, but instead, we're buying tanks. We're buying long-range missiles. That was part of this $35 billion that Lockheed got, was because we're currently having several different companies develop new long-range missiles, and it's basically a bidding war. We're giving each company that makes these things some money to develop one, and whoever makes the best one is going to get the main contract to get billions upon billions more, according to the Washington Post. So essentially, we're having a bidding war right now to see who can make the bomb that goes the furthest and blows up the most things. And then whoever gets that, whoever makes it, whoever creates it, you're going to get a few extra $1 billion because congratulations, you won the American contest of death. Because let's be honest, that's what this is. That's what is happening here. We are so invested, the military complex here in the United States is so invested in destroying as much as possible that the government doesn't care what they're blowing money on. Meanwhile, too many kids in this country go each day without enough to eat. They're not getting proper nutrition. We have U.S. military veterans and other American citizens that sleep on the streets each night. They don't know where their next meal is going to come from. They don't have a roof over their head. If it gets too cold, they freeze to death. If it gets too hot, they can die from dehydration. And yet we're dumping tens of billions of dollars into each individual defense contractor. And that's what's disgusting here. This isn't all of them as a whole. This is what we give each individual one. Students right now who are saying, I can't go to college because one, I can't afford it, and two, I can't afford to be straddled with that $100,000 in student loan debt for the next 40 years of my life. So they don't go. Meanwhile, $35 billion to Lockheed, $26 billion to Boeing in one single year. And you're going to sit there and tell me that we can't get universal health care, that we can't get debt-free college, that we can't address the issue of homelessness, that we can't not cut Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and all of these other programs designed to help American citizens. Why? Because we need to go blow more stuff up? Because we need to just show our military might? Because Donald Trump needs a few more floats for his parade? Is that what this is about? Something has to change. We cannot continue on as a country when we think that it's more important to build up our arsenal of tanks and planes and bombs just in case. Because let's never forget, the United States military is better funded than any other military on the planet. As a percentage of GDP, we pay more, spend more on our military than most of the rest of the industrialized world combined. Not just more, but more combined than most of them. We could cut our military budget almost in half and still be spending more than any other country in the world on our military. And yet, when it comes to taking care of our citizens, we're among the last among the industrialized world. And speaking of budgets, recently when Donald Trump announced his new budget, 2019 budget, he decided that we don't really need an environment, I guess. We don't need to track things like climate change. We don't need to be fully aware of how bad corporations are destroying the planet. So in Donald Trump's 2019 budget, there's some cuts here. So let's see what he wants to cut. We have $16.5 million in funding cut from the overall EPA budget, 48 jobs lost at the Global Climate Change Research Program. He has zeroed out $66 million for the Atmospheric Protection Program, another $103 million cut from the APP. It's going to eliminate the Science to Achieve Results program, which provides $28 million in research grants and academic fellowships in environmental science and engineering, $99 million cut at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. We're cutting all of these programs designed to protect the planet, or at the very least, give us information about how badly we're destroying the planet. He wants to cut the budgets for those. That is what is in his 2019 budget that just recently came out. At the same time, a few pages later, the Trump administration lays out their energy plan, which, to no one's surprise, calls for more cuts to renewable energy programs while expanding funding for oil, gas, and coal. So not only is Donald Trump slashing millions of dollars from environmental protection and climate change study, but he's also cutting funding for renewable energy and giving more money to the dying fossil fuel companies in the United States. The renewable energy sector has been one of the fastest growing industries in the United States for several years now. And he wants to destroy that because he wants to repay the Exxons, the Shells, the Texacos, the BPs, the coal companies, the fracking industry. He wants all of those guys to have more money. Even though the rest of the world is acting like grown-ups right now and saying we understand the link between burning fossil fuels and climate change, so we're going to start investing more in renewable. We're going to push renewable projects. Our goal is to have our city, our state, our country, renewable energy only in the next 10 years. And yet here we are in the United States. Billions upon billions upon billions of dollars to individual defense contractors. But we've got to cut back on satellites that track carbon emissions in the atmosphere by NASA. That's another one of the cuts in this stupid budget put forth by Donald Trump. He doesn't even want to track carbon in the atmosphere. Because why? That's going to make life pretty tough for those fossil fuel companies who continue to fund Republican campaigns. And God forbid that those big Republican donors have to clean up the mess that they created by destroying our planet. But that's the reality in which we live in today. Thank you for watching today. I appreciate David letting me sit in. I'll be back tomorrow. I am Farron Cousins from Ring of Fire, and you've been watching The David Pakman Show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.